The mining station on Kepler 442c had been quiet for 3 standard months when the distress beacon started screaming across every communication channel in the outer rim. Captain Sarah Chen of the human cargo vessel Persistence was the first to pick up the signal, her ship's sensors cutting through the electromagnetic storm that had been raging around the planet for weeks. "What do you make of this, Marcus?" she asked her engineer, a grizzled veteran who had seen more alien tech than most people could imagine. Marcus Rodriguez squinted at the readouts, his weathered hands dancing across the control panel.
"It's definitely not human, Captain. The frequency pattern is all wrong. But it's weak, real weak. Whatever's sending it doesn't have much power left." The signal was coming from the planet's surface, somewhere in the vast wasteland that stretched between the abandoned mining colonies. Chen had heard stories about Kepler 442c, how the Zarathi Empire had tried to establish a foothold there before the Great War, how they had brought terrible weapons and creatures to help them control the local population. Most of those stories ended badly.
"Orders are to investigate any distress signals, regardless of origin," Chen said, though her voice carried uncertainty.
"Prep the shuttle. Take Dr. Yamamoto and 2 security personnel."
The descent through the storm was brutal. Lightning cracked around their small craft while winds that could tear apart a building tried to push them off course. When they finally broke through the lower atmosphere, the landscape below looked like something from a nightmare. Crystalline formations jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and, in the distance, the skeletal remains of massive war machines dotted the horizon. There, Dr. Yamamoto pointed to a cluster of structures about 2 kilometers ahead.
"The signal's coming from that complex."
The buildings were clearly Zarathi in design, all sharp angles and organic curves that seemed to flow into each other like living tissue. But they were damaged, partially collapsed, and covered in the thick, rust-colored dust that seemed to coat everything on this planet. As their shuttle touched down, Chen could see movement in one of the larger buildings. Something big was in there, and it was definitely still alive. "Stay sharp," she told her team as they stepped out onto the alien soil. The air was breathable, barely, but it tasted of metal and ozone. Whatever's in there has been alone for a long time. The entrance to the complex had been blown open, probably during the final days of the war. Inside, the corridors were dark except for the faint glow coming from bioluminescent panels that still functioned after all these years. The walls were scored with deep claw marks, and, in several places, they could see what looked like dried blood, though whether it was alien or something else entirely was impossible to tell.
The distress signal was getting stronger as they moved deeper into the facility.
It was coming from what appeared to be a massive containment area, surrounded by energy barriers that flickered weakly with whatever power remained in the station systems. "Holy Mother of God," whispered Sergeant Kim when they finally reached the source of the signal. In the center of the containment area was a creature unlike anything any of them had ever seen. It stood nearly 4 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be part organic, part mechanical. Its hide was a deep purple-black, covered in what looked like natural armor plating. 6 powerful legs supported its massive frame, and along its back ran a series of biomechanical spines that pulsed with a faint blue light. But it was clearly dying. The creature's left side was a mess of partially healed wounds and exposed mechanical components. Cables and tubes that should have been connected to something were hanging loose, sparking occasionally. One of its legs was completely severed, the stump wrapped in what looked like emergency medical gel that had long since hardened.
Most heartbreaking of all were its eyes.
They were large and intelligent, a brilliant amber color that seemed to glow with their own inner light. When the creature saw the humans approaching, those eyes focused on them with an expression that could only be described as hope mixed with desperate fear. "It's a battle beast," Dr. Yamamoto said quietly, consulting the scanner she carried.
"The Zarathi used them as living weapons during the war.
This one's been modified extensively, probably one of their elite units."
"Why is it signaling for help?" Chen asked. "I thought these things were programmed to kill anything that wasn't Zarathi."
"Look at the modifications," Yamamoto pointed to the creature's head, where they could now see a complex array of cybernetic implants.
"Someone's been working on its neural pathways. These aren't standard military augmentations, they're much more sophisticated."
The creature made a sound then, a low harmonic that seemed to vibrate through their bones. It wasn't aggressive or threatening, it sounded almost like a question.
"It's trying to communicate," Yamamoto realized. "The modifications must have enhanced its intelligence beyond the normal parameters for a battle beast."
Sergeant Kim kept his weapon ready but lowered. "Captain, we should be careful." Even wounded, that thing could probably tear through our entire team without breaking a sweat.
Chen studied the creature for a long moment.
Its amber eyes never left her face, and she could swear she saw something like pleading in their depths. The distress signal was coming from a small device implanted near its head. Someone had given it the ability to call for help. "It's been alone here for 3 months," she said finally.
"Maybe longer. Whatever happened to its handlers, they're long gone."
The creature shifted slightly, and they could see more of its injuries. Burns covered much of its right side, and several of the biomechanical components along its spine were cracked or completely missing. But, despite its obvious pain, it made no aggressive moves toward them. "The question is," Chen continued, "who modified it to be able to call for help?
And why?"
Dr. Yamamoto was already scanning the surrounding area with her equipment.
"Captain, I'm reading massive amounts of medical equipment in the next chamber. This wasn't just a containment facility, it was a laboratory."
They made their way carefully around the containment area, always keeping the creature in sight. It watched them move but didn't try to follow or threaten them. If anything, it seemed curious about their presence.
The laboratory beyond was a treasure trove of alien biotechnology.
Workstations covered in complex instruments lined the walls, and massive tanks that had once held unknown specimens stood empty and dark. But what drew their attention immediately was a large viewing screen that still functioned, displaying what appeared to be research notes in multiple languages, including Human Standard.
"Someone was working on these creatures," Yamamoto said as she studied the screen.
"Trying to reverse the conditioning that made them into weapons. Look at this, they were attempting to restore the original intelligence and personality of the species."
The notes told a fascinating and heartbreaking story.
The battle beasts weren't originally weapons at all, they had been a peaceful, highly intelligent species called the Vorthak. The Zarathi had captured them decades ago and used horrific biotechnology to turn them into living instruments of war, suppressing their natural intelligence and replacing it with programmed aggression and obedience. But someone, the notes were signed by a Dr. Keth Varen, apparently a Zarathi researcher, had been working to undo that conditioning. The project had been going on for months before the facility was abandoned, and, according to the logs, they had made significant progress with several subjects. This one, Yamamoto pointed to a file that displayed an image of their battle beast, was designated as Subject 47.
Real name. She paused as she translated the alien script, Kithara. According to these notes, Dr. Varen had almost completely restored her original personality. "Her?" Chen asked.
The Vorthak have 3 genders, but this one corresponds roughly to female in human terms.
Yamamoto continued reading.
She was a teacher before her capture. Specialized in what translates to harmony studies, helping different species understand each other.
The irony was staggering.
This creature that had been turned into a weapon of war had originally been dedicated to promoting peace and understanding between different races.
A new sound from the containment area drew their attention back to Kithara.
She had moved closer to the barrier, and the harmonic sound she was making had changed. It was more complex now, almost musical. "She's trying to sing," Yamamoto said with wonder in her voice. According to these notes, music was how the Vorthak communicated complex emotional concepts. Chen felt something shift in her chest as she listened to the alien song. Despite not understanding the language, she could hear the loneliness in it, the hope, and, underneath it all, a deep sadness that spoke to something universal.
"How long since she's seen another living being?" Chen asked.
According to the facility logs, Dr. Varen and his team evacuated when the Zarathi fleet withdrew from this sector.
That was 4 months ago.
4 months alone, injured and dying, with nothing but the hope that someone might hear her distress call and come to help. The fact that she had survived this long was a testament to both her physical resilience and her will to live.
"Captain," Sergeant Kim said quietly, "what are we going to do? We can't just leave her here."
Chen looked at her team, then back at Kithara, who had stopped singing and was watching them with those intelligent amber eyes.
"Dr. Yamamoto, what would it take to get her medical attention?"
"That's complicated. Her biology is completely alien, and half of her systems are biomechanical. I'd need to study these research notes extensively, and even then..."
Yamamoto shook her head. "We'd need specialized facilities, equipment we don't have."
"But she can be helped?"
"Possibly. Dr. Varen's notes include detailed medical protocols.
If we could get her to a proper research facility, with the right resources.
Yamamoto paused. But even if we could treat her injuries, where would she go? She's the only one of her kind we know of.
The rest of the Vorthak were either killed or are still in Zarathi hands being used as weapons.
Chen walked closer to the containment barrier.
Kithara moved to mirror her position, pressing one massive clawed hand against the energy field. Up close, Chen could see the intelligence in those amber eyes, the awareness of a being who understood exactly what her situation was. The barrier's failing anyway, Marcus's voice crackled through their comms from the shuttle. Power readings for the whole facility are dropping fast. Whatever's keeping her contained won't last much longer. Which meant they had a choice to make, and they had to make it quickly. They could leave Kithara here to die alone when the containment field finally failed and the hostile environment claimed her. Or they could take a massive risk and try to help a creature that most of the galaxy would consider an enemy weapon. Chen thought about the research notes, about a being who had once been a teacher of harmony between species, whose only crime was being in the wrong place when monsters decided to turn her into a weapon. She thought about the lonely song they had heard, and the hope in those amber eyes. Marcus, prep the cargo bay for a large passenger.
Medical priority.
Captain, are you sure about this?
Kim asked.
Chen looked at her team, then at Kithara, who seemed to understand that a decision was being made about her fate. She's been alone long enough, Chen said simply. And, according to those notes, helping others understand each other was her life's work.
Maybe it's time someone returned the favor.
The next few hours would determine whether Chen's decision was inspired compassion or the worst mistake of her career. But, as she watched Kithara press her hand against the barrier, she knew she couldn't walk away. Not from someone who had been calling for help in the darkness for so long, hoping that somewhere in the galaxy, someone would care enough to answer. The first challenge was getting Kithara out of the containment area without the energy barrier crushing her or allowing her to accidentally harm the rescue team. Dr. Yamamoto had spent the last hour studying Dr. Varen's research notes, trying to understand the creature's biomechanical systems well enough to safely disable the containment field.
The barrier isn't just keeping her in, Yamamoto explained as she worked at one of the laboratory terminals.
It's also providing life support, regulating temperature, atmospheric pressure, even providing some kind of energy feed to her mechanical components. Marcus had brought additional equipment from the ship, including a portable medical scanner that he was trying to adapt for alien physiology. Her power levels are critical, he reported.
Whatever's feeding energy to those biomechanical implants is nearly depleted. Chen watched Kithara through the barrier.
The massive creature had been mostly still for the past hour, conserving energy, but her amber eyes tracked every movement the humans made. There was an intelligence there that made Chen uncomfortable about keeping any thinking being locked up, even for their own safety.
How much time do we have? Chen asked. At current drain rates?
Maybe 6 hours before complete system failure, Marcus replied grimly.
Yamamoto looked up from the terminal where she had been translating medical protocols.
I think I understand the basics of her life support needs, but taking her out of this environment is going to be extremely risky. Her species evolved on a planet with different gravity, atmospheric pressure, and electromagnetic fields. The modifications Dr. Varen made included artificial organs to help her survive in other environments, but they're damaged.
What about the persistence? Can we modify our medical bay?
We'd need to replicate these environmental conditions as closely as possible, Yamamoto said, gesturing at the containment area. Higher gravity, increased atmospheric pressure, and we'd need to rig some kind of bioelectrical field generator to power her mechanical components. Sergeant Kim had been checking the facility's other areas and returned with concerning news. Captain, I found several other containment areas. They're all empty now, but the damage suggests the occupants didn't survive whatever happened here. The implications were chilling. Kithara might be the only survivor of Dr. Varen's rehabilitation program, possibly the only member of her species who had been freed from the mental conditioning that turned her people into weapons.
All right, Chen decided. We do whatever it takes.
Marcus, start modifying the cargo bay for higher gravity and pressure. Doctor, I need a list of everything we'll need to keep her alive during transport. Captain, Kithara's voice was barely a whisper, but it was definitely speech.
Everyone froze. The universal translator in Chen's earpiece was struggling with the alien phonetics, but the meaning was clear. She can speak standard, Yamamoto breathed.
Dr. Varen's notes mentioned teaching the subjects various languages as part of their rehabilitation. Shen approached the barrier carefully.
Kythera? Can you understand us?
The massive creature nodded slowly, a distinctly human gesture that looked strange coming from her alien form.
Understand, yes. Dr. Varen taught many words. Many concepts.
Her voice was deep and harmonic, with strange overtones that the translator couldn't quite process.
We want to help you, Shen said. But we need to take you off this planet. Can you trust us? Kythera's amber eye studied Shen's face for a long moment.
Trust, she repeated the word as if testing its meaning.
Dr. Varen spoke of trust. Said, healing requires trust between species. Are you in pain right now?
Pain is constant companion since evacuation. But pain of loneliness worse than pain of body. Kythera shifted slightly, and they could see her wince as damaged components sparked.
Thought no one would come. Thought would die alone like others.
The casual mention of others sent a chill through the rescue team.
How many of her kind had died in this facility? Dr. Varen had to leave quickly, Shen said gently. The war.
War, Kythera's voice carried a note of deep sadness.
Always war. My people made for war, but we were not always weapons. Dr. Varen helped me remember, before. Yamamoto stepped forward. Kythera, we have Dr. Varen's research notes. His medical protocols. We want to help heal your injuries, but we need to move you to our ship. Will you let us try?
The creature considered this for several seconds.
If fail, death comes anyway. If succeed.
She paused, seeming to search for words.
Perhaps serve original purpose again. Help species understand each other. That's exactly what we're hoping for, Shen said.
The next 2 hours were a complex dance of preparation.
Marcus worked frantically to convert part of the cargo bay into a high-pressure environment that could support Kythera's alien physiology. Meanwhile, Yamamoto studied the medical protocols, creating a temporary life support system that could keep the creature's biomechanical components functioning during transport. The most challenging part was creating the bioelectrical field that powered Kythera's artificial organs. The Zarathi technology was incredibly sophisticated, using principles that human science was only beginning to understand. It's like they took her natural bioelectric field and amplified it through mechanical components, Yamamoto explained as she worked. But the amplification system is failing. That's why her mechanical organs aren't getting enough power. Can we replicate it? Crude approximation, maybe.
Enough to keep her alive for a few days, but we'd need a real medical facility to do permanent repairs. While the technical preparations continued, Shen found herself talking with Kythera through the containment barrier. The creature was remarkably articulate despite the obvious strain of maintaining conversation while in constant pain. Before capture, Kythera explained slowly, was teacher at Harmony Institute. Helped young Vorthak learn to understand thoughts and feelings of other species.
Was meaningful work.
What was your homeworld like?
Beautiful. Crystal forests that sang in the wind.
Cities that grew like living things, shaped by harmony between nature and technology.
My people valued understanding above conquest.
Her voice carried deep longing.
Now homeworld is Zarathi stronghold.
My people serve as weapons in wars they would have opposed.
Shen felt a surge of anger at the injustice. An entire peaceful species enslaved and perverted into instruments of violence. Dr. Varen was trying to free others like you?
Yes. Had facility with 37 subjects when work began. Some too damaged by conditioning, minds broken beyond repair.
Others fought against healing, programming too strong.
Only 7 of us achieved full memory restoration.
What happened to the others? Kythera's amber eyes darkened.
When evacuation order came, transport ships not big enough for all subjects.
Dr. Varen chose to save research data and equipment, hoping to continue work elsewhere.
She paused, and, when she continued, her voice was barely above a whisper.
Others asked to be given final peace rather than return to weapon status. The magnitude of the tragedy hit Shen like a physical blow.
6 other rehabilitated Vorthak had chosen death over returning to their lives as enslaved weapons.
Why did you choose differently? Hope, Kythera said simply.
Dr. Varen said humans were different from other species. Said humans had capacity for compassion that sometimes overcame logic.
Hoped someday humans might find distress signal. Might choose to help rather than fear. It was both heartbreaking and inspiring.
For 4 months, Kithara had endured pain, loneliness, and the constant threat of death, sustained only by the hope that somewhere in the galaxy, there might be beings compassionate enough to help an enemy. Ready for transport, Marcus announced over the comms.
Cargo bay is pressurized and we've got the bioelectrical field generators online.
It's not pretty, but it should work. Yamamoto had finished assembling a portable version of the life support system. I can maintain her basic functions during the transfer, but we need to move quickly. Every minute outside the containment field increases the risk of system failure.
Chen looked at Kithara. Are you ready?
The massive creature pressed both hands against the barrier.
Have been ready for 4 months. Trust in human compassion brought you here. Will trust in human competence to save life you chose to preserve. Disabling the containment field was terrifying.
The moment the energy barrier flickered and died, Kithara collapsed. Without the field's support, her damaged body couldn't maintain stability in the facility's standard atmosphere. Yamamoto immediately began emergency procedures, connecting the portable life support to Kithara's biomechanical systems while Marcus and Kim worked to stabilize her position. The creature was even larger than they had realized, nearly 6 meters from nose to tail and massing at least 4 tons.
Pulse is erratic, Yamamoto reported as she worked.
Her primary heart is struggling, and the mechanical circulation assist is failing.
Moving Kithara to the shuttle required improvisation and more than a little luck.
They used anti-gravity lifters designed for heavy cargo, but the creature's organic components made her difficult to maneuver safely. Every bump and jostle risked further damage to her already compromised systems. During the short flight back to the Persistence, Kithara drifted in and out of consciousness. When she was aware, she spent the time watching the humans work to keep her alive, her amber eyes reflecting something that might have been wonder.
Never thought would see inside human ship, she whispered to Chen during one lucid moment.
This is nothing compared to what you'll see when we get you proper medical attention, Chen promised. The transfer to the modified cargo bay was smoother, but Yamamoto's readings remained concerning. Her bioelectrical levels are still dropping. The field generators are helping, but they're not perfectly calibrated to her physiology. They had managed the immediate crisis of getting Kithara off the planet and into a controlled environment, but Chen was becoming increasingly aware that they had only bought time, not provided a solution. The creature needed medical attention that was beyond their current capabilities.
How long can we keep her stable? Chen asked privately.
Maybe a week, if we're lucky, Yamamoto replied quietly.
But, honestly, Captain, I'm amazed she survived as long as she did planetside. Her will to live is extraordinary. Chen looked through the observation window at Kithara, who was resting in the modified cargo bay. Despite everything she had endured, despite being surrounded by aliens whose species she had been programmed to fight, the creature seemed more at peace than she had since they found her. She's not just surviving, Chen realized. She's starting to hope again. The question now was whether human medicine and determination would be enough to give Kithara's hope a foundation in reality. They were 3 days from the nearest human colony, 5 days from a major medical facility. A lot could happen in that time.
But, as Chen watched Marcus and Yamamoto working tirelessly to keep their unexpected patient alive, she found herself believing that sometimes, just sometimes, hope was enough to work miracles.
The 3rd day aboard the Persistence marked a turning point in Kithara's recovery.
Her bioelectrical readings had stabilized, and Dr. Yamamoto's constant adjustments to the life support systems were finally showing results. More importantly, Kithara was staying conscious for longer periods and had begun showing curiosity about her human rescuers.
The pain is less today, she told Chen during the morning medical check.
Dr. Yamamoto's modifications to energy field are effective.
Feel strength returning slowly.
Chen smiled, though she knew they still had significant challenges ahead.
We're 2 days out from Meridian Station. They have the best xenobiology research facility in this sector. Xenobiology, Kithara repeated the word thoughtfully. Study of alien life. Will they study me like specimen, or treat me like patient?
It was a fair question that Chen had been wrestling with herself. Meridian Station was technically a research facility, and Kithara was quite possibly the only free Vorthok in the galaxy. The scientific value alone would make her invaluable to researchers.
You'll be treated as a patient, Chen said firmly.
I'll make sure of that. Over the past few days, Chen had learned more about Vortak culture through her conversations with Kithara. The rehabilitation process Dr. Varen had used hadn't just restored her memories, it had also returned her natural empathic abilities, which had been suppressed during her weaponization.
Can sense your worry, Kithara said gently. Emotions carry electromagnetic signatures that my species evolved to read. You fear for my safety even after rescue.
I'm concerned about what happens next, Chen admitted. You're unique, Kithara. There are going to be a lot of people interested in studying you, and not all of them will have good intentions.
Understand. Was weapon for decades before Dr. Varen freed my mind.
Know what it means to be valuable to others for wrong reasons. Kithara shifted carefully, her massive form moving with surprising grace despite her injuries.
But, also sense something else in your emotions. Protective instinct. You consider me under your protection. Chen hadn't realized how transparent her feelings were to someone with empathic abilities. You trusted us to save your life.
I feel responsible for making sure that trust wasn't misplaced. In my original culture, Kithara said, such protective bond was called Harmony Guardian.
Those who took responsibility for welfare of others, especially vulnerable ones. Was sacred duty.
The concept resonated with Chen in a way she hadn't expected. Without realizing it, she had indeed taken on the role of Kithara's protector, and the responsibility felt both natural and profound. Marcus had been spending considerable time in the cargo bay, fascinated by the integration of organic and mechanical components in Kithara's physiology.
His engineering background gave him unique insights into how her biomechanical systems functioned.
It's incredible, he told Chen privately.
The Zarathi technology doesn't just replace damaged organs, it enhances them.
Her mechanical heart can pump 3 times more efficiently than her original one, and the neural interfaces allow her to process information at superhuman speeds. But the psychological cost was enormous, Chen pointed out.
Absolutely.
They turned her into something she was never meant to be. Marcus paused in his work.
But here's the interesting part, Dr. Varen's modifications didn't just restore her original personality.
They integrated her enhanced abilities with her natural empathic nature. She's potentially more capable now than she was before capture.
This raised fascinating questions about Kithara's future.
If her enhanced abilities could be used for their original purpose, promoting understanding between species, she could become an invaluable ambassador for peace rather than an instrument of war. Dr. Yamamoto had been working on a different aspect of Kithara's situation. She had been analyzing the medical data Dr. Varen had left behind, trying to understand not just how to treat Kithara's current injuries, but how the rehabilitation process itself worked.
Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand something important, Yamamoto said during one of their evening briefings.
The conditioning process the Zarathi used wasn't just psychological, it actually altered brain structure at the cellular level. Dr. Varen didn't just restore memories, he physically rebuilt parts of her neural pathways.
Is that why the process took so long?
Exactly. And it explains why so few subjects survived the rehabilitation. The brain essentially had to rewire itself completely. The fact that Kithara not only survived but retained her enhanced abilities suggests she has an extraordinarily adaptable mind. This information would be crucial when they reached Meridian Station. The medical team there would need to understand the delicate balance of Kithara's neural modifications to avoid accidentally undoing Dr. Varen's work. On the 4th day, Kithara asked Chen a question that had been weighing on her mind.
What will happen after healing is complete? Where does freed weapon go in galaxy that fears her kind? Chen had been dreading this conversation, partly because she didn't have a good answer.
We'll figure something out. Maybe you could work with xenocultural researchers, help them understand Vortak society.
And if authorities decide I am too dangerous to remain free?
The possibility hung between them like a dark cloud. Technically, Kithara was still classified as an enemy combatant by most galactic governments.
Her rehabilitation might not be legally recognized, especially if officials decided the process could be reversed.
That won't happen, Chen said with more confidence than she felt.
Can sense uncertainty in your emotions, Kithara said gently. Do not make promises you cannot guarantee.
But appreciate the intention behind words. Sergeant Kim had been maintaining security protocols throughout the journey, but he had also become an unlikely confidant for Kithara. His direct, no-nonsense approach seemed to appeal to her. She asks good questions, he told Chen after one of his duty rotations.
About human military tactics, ethics, rules of engagement. She's trying to understand how we're different from the Zarathi.
What do you tell her?
The truth. That humans aren't perfect, but we try to do better.
That our military has rules about protecting civilians and treating prisoners with dignity.
Kim paused.
She finds that concept fascinating.
Apparently the Zarathi don't have anything equivalent.
These conversations were clearly important to Kithara's understanding of her new situation. She was learning that not all species approached warfare the way the Zarathi did, and that some forms of strength came from restraint rather than overwhelming force. The breakthrough came on the 5th day, when Kithara demonstrated an ability that surprised everyone. During routine medical monitoring, she suddenly became agitated.
Something wrong, she announced urgently. Detect distress signals in electromagnetic spectrum. Ship in trouble.
Chen immediately checked their sensors, but found nothing unusual.
Are you sure? Enhanced sensory apparatus allows detection of frequencies your equipment cannot process. Ship is approximately 37 minutes ahead at current course.
Marcus confirmed that they were indeed following a standard shipping lane, and that a vessel in distress in that location was entirely possible. Chen made the decision to trust Kithara's enhanced senses and increased speed. They found the disabled freighter exactly where Kithara had predicted. The vessel had suffered engine failure and was drifting in an area with dangerous radiation levels from a nearby pulsar. Without immediate assistance, the crew would have died within hours. The rescue operation was routine for the Persistence, but the implications were profound.
Kithara's enhanced abilities had just saved 6 human lives. Why did you alert us? Chen asked afterward.
You could have stayed quiet, avoided drawing attention to your capabilities.
Because saving lives is what Harmony Guardians do, Kithara replied simply.
Abilities mean nothing if not used to help others. The rescued freighter crew was effusively grateful, but Chen noticed their nervousness when they learned about Kithara's presence aboard the ship. Fear of battle beasts was deeply ingrained in human psychology after years of war.
This gave Chen an idea. Would you be willing to meet with them? She asked Kithara. To let them see that you're not what they expect? If you believe it would help.
The meeting was arranged carefully, with security protocols in place despite Chen's confidence in Kithara's peaceful intentions.
The freighter crew approached the cargo bay with obvious trepidation.
What they found was a being who spoke to them about their families, their work, their hopes for the future. Kithara's empathic abilities allowed her to sense their emotional states and respond with appropriate compassion and understanding. By the end of the conversation, Captain Torres of the freighter was shaking his head in amazement. I've heard stories about battle beasts for years, he told Chen privately.
None of them prepared me for her. She's not a weapon at all, is she?
Not anymore, Chen replied.
Maybe she never should have been.
The encounter gave Chen the framework for a solution to Kithara's future. If they could demonstrate that rehabilitated Vordhak could serve as bridges between species rather than weapons of war, it might change how the galaxy viewed her people. But, first, they had to reach Meridian Station and ensure that Kithara survived the complex medical procedures she would need. The station was now only 18 hours away, and Chen found herself both hopeful and anxious about what they would find there.
Nervous about tomorrow?
Kithara asked, reading Chen's emotional state as easily as a human might read facial expressions.
A little. But also excited. We're about to find out if human medical science is advanced enough to give you the life you deserve.
Already have life I deserve, Kithara said thoughtfully. Freedom, purpose, beings who treat me with kindness and respect. Medical treatment will allow me to live that life longer, but core value already achieved. Chen realized that in focusing on the medical challenges ahead, she had been overlooking what they had already accomplished. They had taken a dying weapon and restored her dignity as a thinking, feeling being. Everything else was just details.
Thank you, Chen said.
For what?
For trusting us.
For giving us the chance to prove that compassion isn't just a human weakness. Is human strength, Kithara corrected gently. Most dangerous species in galaxy are those who choose compassion despite having power to choose otherwise. As they prepared for arrival at Meridian Station, Chen reflected on how much had changed in just 5 days. They had set out to rescue someone in distress and found themselves caring for a being who embodied the possibility of peace between species that had been at war for decades. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Chen felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: genuine hope for the future. Meridian Station was a massive research complex that orbited a blue giant star, its laboratories and medical facilities serving dozens of different species across the outer rim. As the Persistence approached the docking bay, Chen could see the gleaming towers that housed some of the most advanced medical technology in known space. But she could also see the security ships that had been scrambled to escort them in. Meridian control to Persistence, the communication came through with military precision. You are carrying a Class A restricted biological entity. Maintain current approach vector and prepare for immediate containment protocols upon docking. Chen felt her heart sink.
Meridian Control, the entity in question is a medical patient requiring urgent treatment. We have complete documentation, Captain Chen. This is Admiral Morrison of Meridian Security. We've been briefed on your situation.
The entity will receive medical attention, but security protocols are non-negotiable.
We have 3,000 researchers and medical personnel on this station.
In the cargo bay, Kithara had been listening to the exchange through the ship's communication system. Expected this, she said quietly when Chen came to check on her.
Fear is understandable response to unknown.
You're not unknown, Chen said firmly. You're Kithara. You're a teacher who saves lives and helps people understand each other.
To them, am battle beast carrying unknown modifications.
Their caution is logical.
Despite her words, Chen could sense disappointment in Kithara's harmonic voice.
Question is whether we'll judge based on fear or on evidence.
The docking process was unlike anything Chen had experienced.
Security teams in full protective gear boarded the ship first, followed by a medical team equipped with alien life support equipment. Dr. Sarah Hassan, the chief xenobiologist, was a woman whose reputation preceded her: brilliant, fearless, and utterly dedicated to her work.
Captain Chan, I've reviewed Dr. Varen's research notes, Dr. Hassan said as she examined the cargo bay setup. Fascinating work.
The integration of psychological rehabilitation with biomechanical repair is incredibly sophisticated.
Can you help her? That's what we're here to find out.
Dr. Hassan approached the observation window where Kithara was visible.
Hello, Kithara. I'm Dr. Hassan. I understand you've been through quite an ordeal.
Dr. Hassan, Kithara's voice came through the communication system. I am grateful for willingness to attempt treatment despite security concerns.
No, this situation is unprecedented. Indeed it is. But that's what makes it so important scientifically.
And, medically, Dr. Hassan added quickly when she saw Chen's expression. Every patient deserves our best efforts, regardless of their origins. The transfer to the medical bay was a complex operation involving multiple security escorts and specialized equipment. But, once Kithara was installed in the advanced treatment facility, the focus shifted from security to medicine. The initial examination revealed the full extent of Kithara's injuries. The damage is extensive but not irreparable, Dr. Hassan explained to Chen during the first briefing.
The biomechanical integration is actually quite elegant. Dr. Varen's modifications have created a hybrid system that's more resilient than either organic or mechanical components alone. What's the prognosis? Good, I think.
But the treatment will take time, possibly months. And there are some decisions to be made about her future during that period.
Admiral Morrison had been present for most of the medical discussions, clearly trying to balance security concerns with medical ethics. Dr. Hassan, what can you tell us about the subject's modifications? Are they reversible?
You're asking if we can turn her back into a weapon, Dr. Hassan said flatly. The answer is no, and even if it were possible, it would be a massive violation of medical ethics.
I'm asking about the security implications of her enhanced abilities. Chen stepped forward. Admiral, during our journey here, those enhanced abilities saved 6 human lives. Kithara detected a ship in distress that our sensors couldn't find. This information clearly surprised Morrison. She actively helped in a rescue operation?
More than that, Chen continued. She's been learning about human culture, asking questions about our military ethics and rules of engagement. She's trying to understand how to use her abilities constructively. Dr. Hassan had been conducting more detailed scans while they talked. "Admiral, I think you need to see this," she said, pulling up a brain scan image.
This is Kithra's current neural structure.
The areas highlighted in blue are her original Vortac neural pathways, the ones associated with empathy, teaching, and cross-species communication. The red areas are the military conditioning implants. The image was striking. The blue areas were extensive and showed high activity levels, while the red areas appeared to be dormant or even degrading. Dr. Varen's rehabilitation process didn't just suppress the military conditioning, Dr. Hassan continued. It actually restored her brain to a state that's more similar to her original species than to a battle beast. The enhanced capabilities are integrated with her natural empathic and communication abilities.
Meaning? Morrison asked.
Meaning she's not a reformed weapon, she's a restored person who happens to have enhanced abilities. Over the following weeks, as Kithra underwent treatment, Chen found herself becoming an unofficial liaison between the medical team and the various officials who wanted to study or question their unusual patient. The political implications of a free Vortac were enormous, and everyone seemed to have an opinion about what should be done. The breakthrough came when Dr. Hassan made a discovery that changed everything. "Captain Chen, you need to see this," she said urgently during one of Chen's visits. "We've been analyzing the biomechanical modifications in detail, and I found something remarkable in Dr. Varen's work." She led Chen to a laboratory where complex genetic data scrolled across multiple screens. Dr. Varen wasn't just rehabilitating individual subjects, Dr. Hassan explained. He was developing a process that could be used to free other Vortac from their conditioning. The modifications he made to Kithra include a kind of template, a genetic and neurological pattern that could potentially be transmitted to other members of her species.
The implications were staggering. You're saying she could free other battle beasts? More than that. The process appears to be designed to spread through bioelectromagnetic resonance, something unique to Vortac physiology.
If Kithra came into contact with other members of her species, the rehabilitation pattern could potentially transfer to them. Chen felt her pulse quicken. Dr. Varen created a cure for the conditioning, and Kithra is the carrier.
Exactly.
No wonder the Zarathi evacuated so quickly when they realized what Dr. Varen was doing. If this process spreads, they lose their primary weapon species. This discovery fundamentally altered the political landscape around Kithra's situation. She wasn't just an individual seeking medical treatment, she was potentially the key to freeing an entire enslaved species. When Chen shared the discovery with Kithra, the massive creature was silent for several long minutes. "All along," she said finally, "thought Dr. Varen was trying to save individuals. Never realized larger purpose."
How do you feel about it?
Honored. Terrified. Hopeful. Kithra shifted in her medical bed, her movements now much smoother as her treatments progressed.
But also concerned.
If others learn of this capability, we'll become target rather than patient.
Chen had been thinking about the same issue.
That's why we need to be very careful about who knows what. The solution came from an unexpected source.
Admiral Morrison, who had initially been focused primarily on security concerns, approached Chen with a proposal. "Captain, I've been following the medical reports and the political discussions.
There's a lot of interest in various quarters about your passenger, and not all of it is benevolent.
What are you suggesting? Medical treatment and research takes time.
Meanwhile, certain parties are pushing for Kithra to be transferred to maximum security facilities for study. I think we need to give her legal protection."
"What kind of legal protection?"
"Citizenship. If she becomes a legal resident of the Meridian sector, she gains rights that can't be easily overruled by external authorities." It was an elegant solution, but Chen wondered if Kithra would accept it.
Would she want that? To become legally human? Not human, Morrison corrected. Meridian sector citizenship is species neutral.
She'd be legally recognized as a free being with rights and protections, but she could maintain her cultural identity. When they proposed the idea to Kithra, her response was immediate. "Yes. Want to be person with legal standing rather than property to be studied or contained." The citizenship ceremony was held in the medical bay, with Dr. Hassan serving as witness. It was a simple administrative procedure, but Chen found it deeply moving to watch Kithra formally gain recognition as a free being with legal rights. As her medical treatment neared completion, Kithra faced new questions about her future. She was healthy, legally free, and possessed abilities that could potentially transform the conflict between humans and Zarathi. But she was also alone, possibly the only free member of her species in the galaxy. Have been thinking about purpose, she told Chen during one of their conversations. Dr. Varen gave me gift of freedom, but freedom without purpose is incomplete. What kind of purpose are you considering? Want to establish communication with other Vorthok. Find way to spread freedom without creating chaos or endangering innocence. Kithara paused. But also want to serve original calling. Help species understand each other. Dr. Hassan had been working on a proposal that would address both goals. We could establish a research position here at Meridian Station. Xenocultural Communication Specialist. You'd have access to communication equipment that could reach across the galaxy, and you'd be working with teams trying to improve relations between different species. And the spreading of freedom to other Vorthok? That would be a long-term project, carefully planned and executed through diplomatic channels. We're not talking about a military operation, but about offering choice to beings who may not even remember they could choose. 6 months after her rescue, Kithara stood in her new laboratory at Meridian Station, surrounded by communication equipment that could reach across known space. Her injuries had healed completely, and the biomechanical enhancements that had once been instruments of war were now tools for peace. Chen visited regularly, their bond as Harmony Guardian and protected remaining strong despite the changes in their circumstances. During one such visit, Kithara shared exciting news. Have made contact, she said, her amber eyes bright with excitement. Found 3 Vorthok serving with Zarathi forces who retained enough original personality to respond to coded transmissions. That's incredible. What's the next step? Patience. Building trust across vast distances while avoiding detection by Zarathi monitors. But, foundation is established. Kithara moved to the window that overlooked the research station's main laboratory complex. Dr. Varen's dream of freedom spreading among my people begins to become reality. Chen joined her at the window. What about your other work? The xenocultural research? Equally rewarding. Currently working with team trying to establish communication protocols with the crystalline entities in the Andromeda Galaxy. My empathic abilities allow me to sense emotional resonances even across species barriers that seem impossible to cross. It was the perfect integration of Kithara's enhanced abilities with her original calling. She was once again a teacher helping species understand each other, but now with capabilities that made her uniquely effective at bridging seemingly impossible gaps. Do you ever regret it? Chen asked. The journey that brought you here? Everything you've lost? Cannot regret path that led to freedom and purpose, Kithara replied. But often think about others still trapped in conditioning. Every day of freedom carries responsibility to work toward their liberation. As Chen prepared to leave on her next cargo mission, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them all to this point. A routine response to a distress call had become a rescue mission that transformed into something much larger, a first step toward freeing an entire enslaved species and creating new possibilities for peace between former enemies. We'll miss your visits, Kithara said as they said goodbye. But no, this is not ending, is beginning. Work we began together will continue until all who wish for freedom can choose it. Chen hugged the massive creature carefully, still amazed by the gentleness in a being that had been designed as a weapon of war. Take care of yourself, Kithara. The galaxy needs teachers like you. And explorers like you, who choose compassion when faced with the unknown. As the Persistence departed Meridian Station, Chen watched through the viewports until the research complex disappeared among the stars. Somewhere in those laboratories, Kithara was working to contact her enslaved people and help different species understand each other. The abandoned battle beast had found her way home, not to a place, but to a purpose. And, in doing so, she had shown that sometimes the most powerful weapons could be transformed into the most effective instruments of peace. The distress signal that had started it all was silent now, replaced by signals of hope reaching out across the galaxy to those who still waited in the darkness for someone to answer their call for freedom.